Welcome to KC Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit voice. We tell the stories of Kansas City nonprofits and the people behind them. KC Cares is that intersection of the nonprofit and profit communities, making Kansas City a better place to live, work, and play. This KC Cares segment is brought to you by the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation, www.kauffman.org. Since 1978, the Greater Kansas City Community Foundation has been hard at work increasing the philanthropic footprint of Kansas City. Today, the foundation manages more than $6 billion in assets and houses more than 7,000 charitable funds established by families, individuals, and businesses, supporting charitable causes that are important to them. It also has provided more than $7 billion in grants since its inception. That's a lot of money, folks. What better organization to turn to for this Ask the Expert episode to discuss trends in philanthropy in 2025? And joining us is Mariah Roady. She's a philanthropic advisor at the foundation. Welcome, Mariah. We're so glad to have you here.
Thank you, Ruth. I'm glad to be here.
All right, let's dig in. Well, first of all, let's do some basics. I don't know if folks know what a philanthropic advisor at the Community Foundation is and does. Enlighten us, please.
Sure. So our job is to make giving as easy as possible. And so one of the things that we can do is help donors really think through their grant making strategy and really develop what that looks like for their current generation and generations to come. We do quite a bit of legacy planning. And so really our job is to support the charitable landscape here in Kansas City and really across the country.
Okay, with that mindset, we're in this new year, 2025. The whole new world in many ways for everybody, but I think particularly in the nonprofit sector. And you've got some insight. So let's take off. Give us some of those insights and how they're going to impact those nonprofits.
Absolutely. So I am thrilled to be here and share some of these findings because I was really fascinated when I attended the release of the 2025 Trends article that the National Center for Family Philanthropy released. And there are so many things that I thought, well, yes, that's happening in Kansas City. I see the same things that are in this big, lofty report reflected right here in our hometown. Some of those things are really great things that we as nonprofits should be uplifting as much as we can. Donors, they want to know. They want to know more about different causes that they might be interested in supporting. And through this article, it really discussed family philanthropy and how it is starting to change. One of the things that we're seeing is a more grantee-focused approach. Some like to use the phrase trust-based philanthropy, but donors are really wanting to dive in deeper with nonprofits, understand those missions more fully, and make larger grants to organizations and missions that they care deeply about. So one of the biggest things that was really fascinating to me is we're not seeing the same volume of grants go out the door, but we are seeing higher amounts going out the door. And so you see that reflected in large family foundations giving to those causes that are most meaningful to them and kind of the shared family philanthropy. And so I thought that was really fascinating. And it kind of goes back to fundraising basics. And I know because I wore that hat for 10 years prior to joining the foundation and kind of working on the other side of philanthropy. But we're seeing this significant shift towards families just really wanting to be more involved. And it goes back to what they tell you in Fundraising 101, relationships are everything. And that remains true and is even further strengthened by the release of this report and the data that was compiled.
I'm wondering, so you're a nonprofit, you're seeing that family foundations are doing this kind of zoomed in, deep dive. How do you get connected to those? I mean, you just like kind of randomly call and some of these families and say, we understand that you're philanthropic in the community. We want your money, not quite that crassly, but since you've sat on the other side, what advice would you give, given that's a trend this year?
Well, honestly, there's nothing revolutionary about what I'm about to tell you, but it's really maintaining those strong relationships with your donors. Even our donors who have donor advised funds, they're people just like you, just like me. And so maintaining those regular relationships is just key. There's nothing brand new to the science of philanthropy. In fact, I think we're just reinforcing the basic principles. But, one thing that I think is important, especially right now, because nonprofits are facing some unprecedented times, that we need to, as nonprofits, need to be sharing those gaps in philanthropy, support that storytelling mixed with the data. With our current administration, we have seen just a lot of shifts in philanthropy or shifts with funding, federal funding. And so philanthropy is going to be asked to step up in some different ways. And donors need to know what the gap is, what that looks like, mixed with really great storytelling about your mission.
This may seem a weird question, but I've wondered, let's say family A is really invested in what your nonprofit is doing. Is it fair game to say, and if you know others, that would have this concern, would you be willing to introduce us? Would you be willing to tell us? Or is that kind of a no, don't mix?
Absolutely. I mean, word of mouth is still one of the greatest forms of advertisement, promotion, marketing, all of it. And so it is seeding your networks and seeing who else might be in love with your mission. They just don't know it yet. And that's your job as a fundraiser to share why they should be loving your organization.
Great. I've often thought about, the etiquette of doing that. And of course, if you have a good relationship, I'm sure you can feel that out, that there are probably certain people you can do that with and others who might take offense or for whatever reason. Let's go to your next trend. What else is up?
There's a lot of great things. One of the things, we're seeing a big shift in generational engagement. And so there's a big passing of the baton from previous generation to the next generation. And that just has complexities to it because we have different philosophies in our families. And adding generational philosophies is a whole nother ball game. And so we're seeing just a big shift of that passing and trying to take, maybe what this third generation, Gen 3, what some of their foundational principles are, and trying to find this blend towards the fourth generation, fifth generation, and including them in family philanthropy. And so we're seeing a lot of younger family members being asked to come and learn, participate in grant making. And we're seeing those dynamics kind of play out differently. That's why in the last several years, you've seen a lot of family foundations maybe shift their grant making practices. I mean, worldly events also contribute to some of those strategic shifts. But more than anything, I think there's just a big shift in generations and trying to figure out what that looks like for each family. And it's a living, breathing thing. The way it looks one year may not be how it is the next year, which you're going to get tired of me saying this, but it all goes back to maintaining those relationships with your donors. So that way, if you've been working with the third generation and fourth and fifth generation are coming into the mix, you want to be maintaining those existing relationships, but also start trying to find the interests of those next generations, bring them along as much as we can do at the community foundation to help facilitate those processes. It's got to be a two-way street to where the nonprofit organizations are also supporting the work and telling their story, so that way we can come to that perfect marriage of philanthropic support doing what it was designed to do, serve the community in the best ways possible.
When I read your article, which folks can go to growyourgiving.org, and it's titled, I believe it's Trends for 2025.
Yes, the future of philanthropy, key trends, key takeaways, and trends to watch.
So be sure to go and you can get all the details. I wanted to make sure we got that in. But one of the things that was interesting to me is that of family foundations, the founder or the establishing member is still very active.
Yeah.
Tell us a little more about that and about intent of their foundation and what's happened there, because you've talked about bringing in these younger generations as well.
Sure, absolutely. So yeah, we're seeing that the founder of a lot of these funds, they're still in the picture, maybe playing a different role, but they still want to be involved because it's personal. It is your family. It's the legacy that you want to leave and how you want the community to remember who you were and what you did, how you made them feel. It's kind of taking, personal, professional, the money, the family, and bringing it all together in this way. I think I always use the example HR. You're taking everyone's stuff outside of work, the personal, and everything inside the workplace, the professional, and where all of that meets is where that position lives. And that's kind of how I feel where we live here at the Community Foundation, particularly as philanthropic advisors, is we're taking all of these different pieces and layering them and mixing them together to find out what works best for the donor. And sometimes that is upholding that original donor intent. If they're still involved, we will hold that individual's donor intent for the lifetime of the fund. But if there are future generations that are wanting to be involved and that fund founder is really wanting to see that evolution of philanthropy, then we will make that possible, and we will work on kind of blending some of those older philosophies with some of the newer generational philosophies.
It must be so fascinating to sit in a room when you've got 2 and 3 generations, because it's just natural family dynamics. I think the kids always have, for a while maybe, kind of different thoughts, and that can continue, or they come to more of that family centered, we're gonna support widgets in Mozambique. That's a very bad example, but hopefully getting to the point. We're talking to Mariah Roady. She is with the Greater Kansas City Community Foundation, and we're talking about trends for 2025. I know you also mentioned this focus or this emphasis on grantee-centric practices. Okay, what does that mean?
Yeah, that means that donors are really wanting to hear from the community. They're wanting to hear what are the issues that are facing the communities that we want to support, and they're diving deeper. So they're really establishing those stronger relationships with organizations that have causes that really resonate with them, and they're making bigger grants, smaller grants, or smaller number of grants, but larger in size, which is really incredible for so many organizations. That impact will continue to sustain and maintain those organizations despite the uncertainty that the world might and most likely will bring in the coming days.
Okay, but what if you're not those favorite nonprofits, in their missions? How would you advise then someone to, I think I know the answer, to get in the game, so to speak?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of different strategies, but I think just looking at your existing book of donors, those folks that are supporting you. To your earlier question, who do they know that might be interested in supporting the mission? Philanthropy can also be social. So we'd like to do what our friends are doing, inviting other people to the table to support organizations and missions that you care about. That's one easy way, is using the people that you already have who love you. Use them to get more people to love you just as much, and just continue that. And I think storytelling is key. Having a strong social presence is really significant and can set you apart from some other organizations that might have been established well beyond your organization formed. Is being relevant, being timely, being bright, being optimistic. All of those things will really help to elevate your brand and your mission.
We saw during COVID, though, let's go back, that thing that was in history and hopefully will stay in history.
Fingers crossed.
Yes, fingers crossed. A lot of, I would say, crisis funding, really emergency funding. We're out of that, but there are still, quote, emergencies and concerns, as we said, in the current political environment. We don't need to say yes or no, but it is what it is. So do you come to a donor fund or a family and say, hey, we're really in a bad place?
So, yeah. And you know what? Our donors are asking for it. Several of them are. They're wanting to know how certain worldly events are affecting organizations in our community. And so it is our job as philanthropic advisors to be that liaison between what we're seeing on the ground with those nonprofits doing such incredible work, and then being able to relay it to those donors that are really curious and have an appetite to learn more. And so that's why storytelling and the data coming together really give that holistic picture. And so I would just encourage nonprofits to have that ready to go, so that when Mariah Roady comes knocking on your door, you have something that I can relay to donors that can help to mobilize that giving. And, you brought up COVID, which was an incredible, if there's anything good to be said about COVID-19, if there's anything, it is that people came together in a big way to support people, to support organizations that were doing incredible work in an environment that was unprecedented, unknown, and scary. It was wild. In April of 2020, donors granted 170% more dollars than in April 2019. And so the best thing about donor advised funds, and those are funds set up by donors to essentially grow. So all of the dollars are invested here at the Community Foundation. Those dollars grow. And really, as we see unprecedented times and times of uncertainty, these dollars are already here. That's the best thing about it, is that they're already here. When the market is great, those dollars are growing significantly. And so dollars are here. And as things arise, they can be mobilized. And that's the job that I am lucky to hold. I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. So they should call 1-800-CALL-Mariah to get all that great advice. There you go.
Yes.
Let's talk.
Call me.
Call. Well, go ahead, please. You can give a phone number if you would like folks to contact you.
Oh, get my email, and I would be delighted to help anyone, because I have a heart for nonprofit work. I will never leave nonprofit work, and I know you're not supposed to say never, but I can tell you that I will live in nonprofit sector for the rest of my days, because it it is meaningful to me, and it does so much good for the community. So email me anytime at roady@growyourgiving.org. And that's ROADY, road with the Y, at growyourgiving.org.
That's fabulous. So I think a number of nonprofits are still grappling with COVID money that went away. Boost up, help in the community, those funds go away. Any advice that you could give looking at the trends to those organizations that are still kind of figuring out and may have been hit financially,
Ooh,
with that change?
that's a good question. So, I think that sometimes as nonprofits, we want to develop programs and things that we think donors are really going to be interested in funding. And that's working a little bit backwards, because you don't want to create programs for your donors. You want to create programs and sustain and maintain programs for those that need it. And sometimes when we are fundraisers and we are looking for dollars to do our work, we can get ourselves in some muddy waters in developing programs for funders. And so stay true to your mission. It is easy for mission creep to come in, but stay true to your mission and those that you serve. When COVID relief dollars came through, we saw a lot of organizations that did some really cool projects and, did some facility enhancements of their spaces, gave bonuses. Now, not saying those are not great things, they are, but some of those organizations who made some pretty drastic shifts with that larger influx of unexpected money now are kind of hurting because they spent it. And what we saw some nonprofits do is take some of those dollars and open an endowment, or we call them agency funds here at the foundation. And those are dollars that are really those long-term assets that we work with them to invest, so that in the future, if something else happens, there's that nest egg that's been growing and growing and growing that we know lives there. We're not going to touch it unless we really need it. And that has been really helpful for some organizations.
Another thing that you talk about is a renewed focus on transparency and communication. Let's dive into that for a few minutes and explain that.
Absolutely. So, family foundations are recognizing that transparency is key. They want, for lots of different reasons, but they want their mission and who they are as a family foundation to be as transparent and as forward-facing as possible. There have been fewer foundations in the past that have been wanting to really share information about their work or their specific funding priorities. And we've seen a shift in family foundations really wanting to be very transparent with these are the issues and the causes we want to support, because really, with everything that's transpired in the last couple of years, we've seen so many missions that really are needing support. One of them, as an example, early childhood education with COVID and so many providers closing. And I can speak to that because that's what I was doing the last 5 years, is working at a provider, a nonprofit that provided early education. But, that was a sector that was hit really hard and through the pandemic, and it still hasn't recovered fully. And so one of the foundations that I am lucky to support in my new role here, that is really now their singular focus is that specific area. And so I think it goes back to they wanted to be transparent with the community to say, this is really the area that we want to fund, because we don't want you wasting a lot of time filling out applications and doing all of this work when we've already decided that this is where we want to make our mark. And so I think there's, for lots of different reasons, for efficiency, for just that general sense of, who we are and where we want our philanthropy to go and support.
So you have all these funds, et cetera. How can a nonprofit find out what the John and Mary Smith Family Foundation or the Fred Astaire Donor Advised Fund? How do we get that information? Is it available?
So one of the things about working with family foundations is if they would like us to share information about who they are and what they're wanting to support, then you betcha, I'm going to share everything I can, because we want good things to be happening in the community. But we also have some family foundations and donors that really want to have that anonymity throughout their grant making. And so we really support the community of donors. And that's the role that the community foundation plays in philanthropy, is supporting those donors. And so we will work with donors on however they'd like to be acknowledged and available to the greater community. That being said, one of the things that we can do is, for any nonprofit organization, we can always run reports that show anyone that has given to your organization since 1996 is how far our system will go back. And so we can run those grant giving history reports for any donor that has used their donor advised fund to support your nonprofit organization. And so that list is a great place to start and look at, maybe there are some lapsed donors that we haven't spoken to in a hot minute. They might be someone that I'd want to refresh that relationship and start trying to build, cultivate, and then eventually steward, so that I can continue having that mainstay of support coming through.
Can we go to your site and see who has donor advised funds or family foundations? I mean, is there a directory?
So there's not really a directory, but we do have a listing of competitive grant opportunities. And so there are some different donors that go through that full application process, and you can find all of those different competitive opportunities on our website at growyourgiving.org. But as far as other private family foundations, really that relationship is kind of facilitated by philanthropic advisors. And so really our job is to be going out and hearing from nonprofit organizations about upcoming capital campaigns or programmatic shifts, having those updates, so that way we can relay them back to the donors and really make sure that there's that line of communication. And oftentimes our donors will want us to even do some further research. And so we get to play that middleman. And so I would say, if you do have questions as a nonprofit about donors, ask the community foundation, send us a note, and we will share as much as we can. But then also keep us updated as things come along, because we have a whole team of not Mariah's, but folks in these roles that can help support some of those projects. Because maybe I'm not working with, say your organization is animal welfare. Maybe I don't have any donors in the greater Kansas City area where that's their main focus area, where they want their dollars to go. But maybe my colleague does have a donor that is very interested in that area. We meet often. We meet as an expanded team once a month, and we are always sharing different things that we've heard within the community. So that way, great things can be done, and we can make giving easier for donors, because that's really our ultimate job, is how do we make giving as easy as possible?
I love that. Mariah, thank you so much for sharing these trends, for educating us. Audience, reach out, growyourgiving.org. Have a conversation. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain, right?
So,
thank you for joining us for KC Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit voice. We're produced by Charitable Communications, which is a nonprofit. This KC Cares segment was brought to you by the Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation, www.kaufman.org. Now, if you'd like to be a guest on KC Cares, you can reach out through our website, which is kccaresonline.org, and spread the love. You'll find us on Facebook and Twitter at KC Cares Radio and on Instagram at KC Cares Online. And don't forget, you can catch us on Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. on ESPN 1510 AM and 94.5 FM. Thank you for joining us on KC Cares.